So, Vic, why don't we start with just you giving like a little background on sort of like what brings you to this moment today?
Sure. In 2006, I met a guy who was starting a nonprofit. He's now become my husband, father to my two children, Scott Harrison. Him and I started Charity Water together. He started it a month before I met him. So I never can say that we started it exactly together, but basically, for all intents and purposes. And I was the young, disillusioned marketing professional in New York City trying to make it in the marketing and advertising industry in New York. I was working at a boutique design agency, and our clients were American Express and Honda and all these big brands. And it's what I wanted to do. It's what I went to college for. I used to watch TV and watch commercials and dream about making them. And something switched for me a year into this industry. I was like, I don't want to spend my entire life selling lipstick and cars and credit cards. It's just not meaningful enough for me. And so at that exact moment, I believe in spiritual things. I believe this was preordained. As I was feeling this disenchantment in my industry, I happened to be talking to a next door neighbor who said, I know this guy who came back from living in Africa for 2 years. But before that, he was a nightclub promoter in New York City, running around with models and bottles. And he said, but now he's starting this thing called Charity Water. There's a water crisis. Don't you know that there's people in the world that don't have clean water? And I literally remember thinking, what? There's people in the world who don't have access to clean water. I was that ignorant at 23, having never been outside, having never been into a developing country. Anyway, so I meet Scott, and our kind of two superpowers just really complemented each other. I really believed that so much success in business and starting anything is rooted in marketing and good design. And he came at it from a promotional angle. He was a nightclub promoter, and now he could promote his head off talking about the water crisis. And so we joined forces, started working on Charity Water, built it from a tiny idea in our kitchen, in his Soho apartment's kitchen, to 100 employees, to a $100 million budget annually. And now it's been 15 years. I left about 5 years ago when I started having babies, and went through my own kind of journey. What do I do? Where do I, what do I do with the rest of my life? And I have always believed that, if you can combine two are, in my mind, like the best human beings, because they're the people who saw an injustice and didn't walk away, right? They're the people who decided to take this risk and do something about it. And if you can combine that with the business knowledge and business and marketing knowledge that can be found in the best businesses in the world, like Apple, Nike, Airbnb, Netflix. If you can combine those two things, like that's definitely my life's purpose, is bringing the marketing and business and leadership training to the best people in the world. And, right before we started recording, we were talking about this idea that the nonprofit industry is very much still so far behind where for-profit business is these days, in terms of the quality of business education, marketing, design, leadership, and team building, and raising capital. So that's what I'm doing now. I launched this learning platform for nonprofit leaders called missioncritical.co just last week. And it's really going to be a place for leaders and executives at nonprofits to learn not just the professional skills, but the personal development skills that are needed to develop the character traits that are needed as a good leader, in order to then be able to grow the nonprofit that you started in a scaled and incredibly professional way, so that you can go to sleep at night knowing that you're giving it your all and actually changing the world. And I always think about this idea of like, when you're 85 and in 95, whatever, and on your deathbed, and you look over your life and you say, what was my life all about? Like, what did it mean? Did I do the big things that I dreamed of doing when I was young, right? Did I leave a mark on the world? And I just believe so many nonprofits are playing so small right now, and they're not even realizing that that it's so much of it is up here. And if they could just break out of some of these limiting beliefs the nonprofit industry has been so plagued by, that they could 10x, 100x their impact, so that when they are 85 lying in their bed at night, they can say, I did something that profoundly impacted and changed the world. And that's kind of what I'm here to do. That's what I'm all about.
I love it. And it's so clear why you and I became like really fast friends too, because everything you're saying just resonates so deeply with me. And something you said the first time we talked really like sits with me, you know, that, and I like admittedly probably felt this way about you and Scott and Charity Water too, right? That like you could never understand where I was with my $300,000 organization, because there you are with this $100 million organization with all of these like huge donors, right? But what you said to me on the first call was like, we were right where all of those other organizations were. And what I love about your work is that you are like, I want to save everyone else the 15 years of learning, right, that we went through in building this brand and organization. And I want to teach you what we learned in all of the different kind of iterations of the organizations and giving programs and all those things. And I just think that's so generous to the sector to really share all of that with everyone. I know you do it through your monthly giving course, and it's going to be here on Mission Critical and already is. And so I just want to like say that to anyone who's listening, that like, and I think the other thing though, is that you came to the moment without all the donors, without all the skills that you needed, without all the information about how to build a nonprofit of the size that you are now. But you did come to it with some very fundamental beliefs about your ability to get there. And so talk to me a little bit about kind of like your own leadership journey and what you feel like were some like foundational principles that allowed you to like get over the many hurdles I'm sure you guys experienced.
Yes, it's a very excellent question. What I love and why I think I'm so passionate about this work that I do is I actually came to, when I met Scott, I had 100 layers of limiting beliefs that pretty much crippled me as a young person. I was an immigrant. I came to the US when I was 9 years old. And I talk about this a little bit in on the website in this new training that I have. I was like I was the only person in my family who spoke English at 9 years old. So I saw my parents in a way feel so belittled and so embarrassed at their lack of being able to speak the language, that they were scared about absolutely everything. They were scared to walk into a store by themselves. I would go with them to like the Department of Motor Vehicles to help them fill out the forms for their driver's license. I would go with my mom to the bank filling out forms because she needed me to just even understand what the form said. And, you know, as a kid, like watching my parents be in that position of complete loss of power, right? Of empowerment. I sort of adopted that and carried that with me all through my teens and 20s. And I was incredibly shut down. I was very shy. I was always afraid of saying something wrong. I was terrified of authority, like any person older or more senior than me in any place. I had these like really unhealthy beliefs about power, that my voice didn't matter. Anyway, then I meet Scott, who literally is the 180-degree opposite of me. This guy has more confidence than 70 of me put together. And he just walks around like he freaking owns the place. And I look at that as a product of his parents' parenting, right? I'm also a parent. So I'm always like dissecting, like, how did this person become the way he is? His father and mom, they were very comfortable American middle-class family. and his dad was an executive, and, you know, just kind of always was very confident in who he was and his position and job. Now, his family had a whole bunch of their own challenges. His mother was very sick all of his childhood. But he never had to see his parents sort of struggle in this profound way that I did. And so, and his parents then also just taught him. And I think a lot of it is also, you know, part of it is biological, but I still think so much of it can be learned. So he was born very, very type A in general. And I was not, but he taught me so much about confidence. And what he really taught me is just that, like, you know, if you have a big vision, that can trump and help you get over any hurdles. That can trump any deficiencies that you have. It can inspire you to jump over any of the personal kind of limiting beliefs or hurdles that you have if you have that big vision, that North Star that you're constantly pointing to. So that's what we had at Charity Water. And so one of the first realizations I had was like, you know, we have this ginormous vision. Vik, all of this, you know, insecurity that you're carrying with you, it's like a giant anvil. It's like a huge suitcase that you're just dragging through life with you. And it's not helpful whatsoever. Not a single person. Like if you get up on stage and you're shy and you're scared and people can sense that, right? If you're giving a speech or a talk or something, like think about it from the experience of the people in the audience, right? If you're in an audience, who do you want to come up on stage? Somebody who is incredibly nervous and radiating that very like uncomfortable energy? Or would you like to see a speaker who's like, hey guys, what's up? I'm here. I'm super confident. Like, let me tell you a story, right? It's a better experience for the person sitting, listening to you. And that was like my first realization is nobody wants your insecurity, Vik. Like nobody wants you to show up to life, to the office, to the stage insecure. No one's looking for that from you, basically. And that helped me so much be like, oh, okay, you know what? Like, let's just get on. Like, how do we move past this?
Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that. And I just think that is such a mind-blowing realization for women in general. It sort of was for me too. Like the moment I was like, actually, like, why am I playing so small? Like, what are the beliefs that have me feeling like I'm not supposed to take up space? And I'm not saying there aren't structural things that teach us that along the way, but you're right. Then we like come into these moments and it's like, no, like now is the time to like take that power back and show up embodied and emboldened. And I love the vision piece. And I love that about your training. You guys, you should all go to missioncritical.co right now and go to this confidence and vision lesson, because you download it or you click on it, you get it in your email. It is the combination, I think, of that piece. And I've never seen confidence kind of taught that way, combining the vision with confidence in the way you talk about it. And I think it resonated so deeply with me, even as a mission-driven business owner. And so I love that you're like bringing those things together.
Yeah, the vision piece is huge. And I got to see, you know, on this note, I got to see what it looks like to have this insane vision and to believe in it and to rally people around it. Because, you know, I think so often no one teaches you all these things in nonprofit, that the bigger your vision is, you know, I think it's easy to say, well, a really, really huge vision, like solving the water crisis, is unhelpful because it's unbelievable. You're probably never going to actually reach it. But I think there's something deep down in all of our like who we are as people, right? Life is epic. Like life is meant to be lived, right? And we want to believe that like this world has a little bit of magic in it, right? And so when you cast this big vision and you do a great job of telling people about it in a really inspiring, passionate way, it kind of makes believers out of people, right? Even and we all, because so many of our decisions are based off of emotion and then backed up with logic later, like we're super happy to put the logic to put that on the back burner for a second when our emotions are captured by a really big vision in a very captivating way, right? And so a lot of nonprofits, I think, are just afraid to do that because they're scared they'll look foolish, and that they'll look that people will think that they're childish, or too playful or whatever. And it's like, no, we all want to kind of connect with that like inner child in us who used to remember that like life had a little bit of magic in it and anything was possible. So if a business or a nonprofit comes along and reminds us of that, that is so powerful.
Oh my gosh. And, something that is coming up for me as you're talking about this, I talk a lot about like big, hairy, scary goals in fundraising. Like, I'm like, sure, like set your budget goal that you're going to spend against. Fine. I'm not really interested in that. I want to know your like big, hairy, scary goal. And I want to create a fundraising plan around that. Because what I think is when we have that, or what I've seen is when we have that bigger vision, our brain expands to meet it. Like our problem solving skills expand to meet it. Our possibilities expand to meet it. Our confidence expands to meet it, right? Like we take up the space required to get there. And when we play small, or we're like, I don't want to say that out loud because then my board's going to ask me where that $100 million is, like where, all the sort of limiting beliefs and stories that come up, we shut down and we're like, okay, well, yeah, I only need to talk to these 25 donors to raise that $100,000. And it's like, we're cutting ourselves off at the knees so often.
Absolutely. Yes. And we forget that like human beings have so much more capacity in them than they think they do. We all do, right? And so when we are faced with a seemingly impossible deadline, it's actually one of the best things that can happen to us, because most of the time, like, yes, there's a small possibility of failure, but most of the time we will actually meet it and exceed our own expectations. I think about this story from an organization that I'm really close with, New Story. And I'm going to make sure I didn't lose you. Did we lose each other? I hope.
Oh, no, I can see you and hear you.
Oh, okay, great. I just wanted to, you kind of froze. Okay. So you froze for 1 second. So I want to make sure you're still there. Okay. So this is a story that my friends at New Story talk about a lot. New Story is a housing homelessness organization in developing countries. And they went into this nonprofit, or actually business startup accelerator. They were one of the first nonprofits accepted. It's called Y Combinator, but that doesn't matter. When they were accepted, they were very excited. They were super pumped. They were very young in their first year or second year as an organization. And when they were accepted, they had planned to build 30 homes in the 3 months of being in this accelerator. They accept you for 3 months and help you with your business model. The folks at Y Combinator said, you know what? How about we set a goal of 100 homes, 3 times more than they were expecting to build in the 3 months there. And they were freaked out, terrified, immediately started thinking, this is impossible. We can't do this. But guess what? In 3 months, they did it. They got it done. They got it done because they were pushed by this outside force that told them that anything less than 100 homes was not an option. And they did it. Like, they actually did it, which just goes to show you that we are capable of so much more than we think we are. I saw this great quote. It's actually on my site because I thought it was so appropriate. It was by a startup thinker and blogger. And he said, when faced with the choice to to follow a mediocre vision or a crazy one, choose the crazy one. It's about the same amount of work, but way more fun. And, that also is such a great way to think about it, because honestly, like, I think about what we've accomplished at Charity Water over 15 years. Now we raise $100 million a year annually, and hopefully that'll continue to grow. But we also had 24 hours in a day, and we were just regular people. And Tesla, Elon Musk, has 24 hours in his day and he's a person, right? And so what's the difference between like a small charity that's only raising $500,000 a year to Charity Water to Tesla? It's just vision. It's just how big you let your vision be and how fearless you are at going for that vision. And it's all up in your mind, right? Like the limiting beliefs that you tell yourself, can you do this or can you not do this? It's all in your head.
And I know you said that you sort of came to Charity Water with a number of those yourselves, but I think that like one of the things that has made Charity Water so successful, and one of the things I kind of preach a lot in my work, is about gaining knowledge and experience outside of the nonprofit sector. So I feel like inside the nonprofit sector, we are trained in a very specific way. And for me, and we're surrounded by a lot of people with similar programming, similar mindsets. And for me, like, you know, I tell my story as a fundraiser, hating it most of my career. And then it was actually experiences outside of fundraising, being certified as an executive coach through an organization called IPEC, learning about energy leadership, you know, being trained in behavior design with BJ Fogg at Stanford, learning about design thinking with the folks at IDEO. And it was actually those things that fundamentally changed the way that I showed up as a fundraiser, as a leader. The numbers changed dramatically, how I felt changed dramatically. And I just think like, you know, and I think you are always pushing, you know, you guys have pushed Charity Water in this way. You are doing it in your own work now to be like, okay, pull out of the like loops that you've been in. Here's some knowledge coming from somewhere else. I mean, even that experience of news story, right? It's like those things stepping out of just like what we believe to be like the typical nonprofit training mode. Like it's not working. We got to back up. We have to find new resources. The answers and the mindsets are out there because other industries are using them successfully, and we can too.
Absolutely. You know, the worst phrase in the nonprofit industry is best practices. I freaking hate that phrase because that just means look around at what all the other mediocre nonprofits are doing and copy that, which is not going to get you far. And, you know, there's a reason why I'm just meeting nonprofit folks like you now. We've never really been in even like social circles with many other nonprofit leaders or teachers. And it's awesome because I'm discovering that there's a lot of really amazing people in this world, but I'm just discovering it recently because from the very beginning. So a lot of people look at Charity Water or Scott, you know, and they're like, well, he just has so many connections. He knows so many people. They have all these celebrities. One thing I'll say is that we didn't know any of those people when we started. We were just like every single small startup nonprofit. We had a small handful of friends. Scott didn't have very much credibility in the business world. He was a nightclub guy. Like he used to smoke joints and do cocaine before he started Charity Water. You know, he would call himself a degenerate and a loser. So how he built those relationships was by like first having the big vision that motivated him to be better, that motivated him to hop over all those hurdles that were seemingly impossible to hop over, right? To get the meeting he would pitch 5 to 10 times a day in the beginning of Charity Water. He would travel with his laptop. And I remember watching him and being in awe of this. He never went anywhere without his laptop. He always had a presentation open. If he was on the train, if he was on the bus, if he was at a restaurant, if he was at a nightclub, he would, you know, start up a conversation with people all the time. And he gets this from his dad. Dad talks to everybody from like the mail delivery guy to like the, you know, person at the grocery store. And he would say, you know, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to see it? He would open his laptop and he would take you through a 10, 15 minute, 20 minute long presentation. And I don't even know where I was going with this. What was the point I'm trying to make?
Just how like
vision. Okay, so in the beginning, right? So that's how he built the connections. The connections started by just having having the passion and the energy, like the drive, right? Like where does drive come from? It comes from having the vision. And when you have that vision, you're driven to achieve that vision. And then you're like a more animated, energetic person that people want to be around, right? You're not this like, oh, well, I'm starting this charity and I guess it's gonna be okay, right? So connections and relationships then led him to meet more and more people. And when, the Rolodex started to be built, the people he chose to spend time with were people who were business-minded, business leaders, right? So these days now, I say all that because I was going to say, like, the people Scott spends time with mostly now is like the founder of Spotify, the founder of Airbnb, the founder of Ethereum, crypto, whatever. He's working on a big crypto project. He just got off the phone with Michael Hyatt, right? And so he surrounds himself with, and we always have, with people who are really great business leaders. And I think, so much of what's missing in the nonprofit world is people who, they just don't understand how to run a business. And this is like the business and vision piece put together. A lot of people ask me, well, how, I have a day job. I started this nonprofit, but it's on the side because I can't pay my own salary. So I have to have this day job. I'm like, that's the wrong question. Do not ask me how you can grow your nonprofit if you are not fully in. If you're still working your day job, you're not fully in, and you're not giving yourself that pressure. You're under no pressure to be better, right? Not only do you not have the pressure helping to drive you, because you're comfortable in your, getting paid your whatever salary you're getting paid. So you're going to chug along very, very slowly for a very long time and be very ineffective and make no impact. Quit your job. Find someone to give you $50,000, an uncle or somebody. Raise the friends and family seed round that every single startup founder has to raise in the for-profit world from friends and family. Pay yourself for 6 months and go all in and do it for real, because it will push you. You'll be scared because you won't have a backup plan, but it will push you like crazy to be better. And then you'll be forced to learn the business skills that are absolutely required to run a nonprofit well. Hiring, firing, raising money, accounting, programs, marketing and branding, storytelling, all of those things.
Yeah, we were talking before we hit record about kind of like the foundational pieces, like to everything, and I think that's so true. Like, there's so much from the business world that we need to be learning that is not in a lot of foundational nonprofit training. And it's just this huge missing piece around, connection and relationship building and communication and kind of all of these, I feel like a lot of business trainings, they teach the hard skills too around like marketing and branding, but they also do teach a lot of soft skills, which I feel like we also, like you and I, believe so deeply, these are such foundational pieces, particularly of fundraising, and they're often absent from foundational, like nonprofit training from my experience too, or they're very surface level, like something I hear a lot is like, listen, like practice your listening skills. And I'm like, that does not teach anyone anything. I even say, like, it's not about listening. It's actually about genuine curiosity. Like, what does it take for you to be genuinely curious? If you can figure out how to be genuinely curious, you will have no problem listening, right?
Yeah.
Like, opening your ears, not the problem.
No. I love that. I'm going to plug this in.
Oh, yeah.
1 second. Sorry.
Oh, no. Mine too.
Forgetting to charge my laptop.
So there's one thing I also just want to sort of note from, like, if folks are like, well, I don't have friends and family who could like give me $50,000, like I'm not surrounded by that type of capital. I do want to note for folks that, like, there are a number of foundations, local community foundations, incubators that are starting to pop up in this sector more too, to help with the like seed round for individuals and organizations in that position. But I think your point around being all in, like what I still will see is sometimes people get that seed money or get that accepted into an incubator program like that. And then they're still keeping their day job. And I'm like, no, that gave you the runway to go all in. And you're totally right. You have to be all in to really see what you can do. And what I see happen so often, I'm sure you do too, is when people do chug along on that kind of mediocrity train, what ends up happening is that just continues to confirm their beliefs, their limiting beliefs, that that's where they're stuck. And it just becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. I like that expression. Chug along on the mediocrity train. Get off the train. Get off the train.
Get off the train.
Yes. I'll just tell a really quick experience from my personal life that has nothing to do with nonprofits, but I launched a course about 8 months ago in September. And I've always wanted to launch a course, and I was scared because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I could do it, whether I would be good, whether I would have enough content, whether I could figure out the technology, all the things, right? But I did have this passion to launch a course, and I had a vision because I remember meeting this one woman in my living room who came over to chat with Scott one day for dinner and to meet our family. And she had a $9 million business teaching courses online around weight loss. And she was so, the money doesn't matter. She was so passionate about her community and her message. It's called Bright Line Eating. And she had a personal experience with weight loss and struggling to lose weight in different programs. And she figured something out. It was more mental. And she grew from zero to a $9 million a year business, which for one person is a lot. And so I had this vision, like, wow, and most importantly, she was changing people's lives. She was actually, and so I had this vision for 4 years that I kind of held really close, didn't tell anybody. And then when at the most inconvenient time in my entire life, when we had just bought a house and my kids were home because school was closed during COVID, I decided, okay, now is a great time to put my feet to the fire. Because everything else is chaos anyway. My stuff is in boxes. My kids are running around the house unattended. And we just got 10 chickens on the farm. But let me just put a deadline in place. So,
I love that.
So I knew that I had to give myself a deadline that I could not get out of. 6 weeks was my deadline. I had not a single piece of content written. I had not a single video recorded, but I did have a very rough outline and an idea about what I wanted to teach. And I'll tell you, I worked harder than I had in the last 4 years in those 6 weeks. But I had the most fun and focus, right? So focus is a big part of having a deadline because you cannot run around doing other things when you're terrified that you're going to that you're going to have a fire festival situation where you're going to be caught with your pants down. So, so all that to say, and not only did I get it done, but I believe that it was the best. It was the best that content could have ever been because I never second guessed every lesson. If I had a year to do what I did in 6 weeks, it would have been worse. It would have been worse because I would have been re-recording and second guessing and being like, oh, I could have done that better. Let me just do it again or whatever, right? And that's the phenomenon of Parkinson's law. Took us a while to remember that you don't necessarily need more time to do more things, bigger things. In fact, having a compressed timeline may actually be the kick in the pants that we all need.
Yes, I love that. And it, one of the questions I was going to ask is, okay, so vision and confidence, that big, hairy, scary goal, but then inside your course, the monthly giving launch guide, which I have had the privilege of being a part of, which is amazing. And folks who are looking and ready to start monthly giving, you've got to check this out. I'll make sure you have links and everything. Is that you also break down, you go from, okay, big vision, and then you start, but then you actually crack some really amazing habit pieces that are like, okay, but how do you get from here to there? And this is one of the things you talk about inside the course, this Parkinson's law. And I know when we talked for the first time, I shared, I didn't even know this was a thing, like actually that other people did, but I do this to myself constantly, where I like publicly declare something that I have done zero for. Yeah. But the declaration is like what's going to hold me to that deadline. And I always figure out how to do it. I always figure out how to get it done. And you're right, I don't second guess it. And I've joked a lot about this, like with my packing. Like, I'm like, give me a big suitcase, I'm going to take up the whole suitcase. Give me a small suitcase, I'm like air. I will take up as much space as you give me. And that is totally true for time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is the number one principle that we've always lived by. And it's not only what I love. I recently read something about why Elon Musk, who is I think now the richest man in the world, what is like the secret to his success. And it's this: he sets insane deadlines, and sometimes he misses them. He actually has missed a bunch of deadlines, but he continues to set insane deadlines because he knows that's how he's going to see progress in his business and how he's going to achieve these big, audacious, crazy dreams. And he knows that he might fail, and he has failed, right? But he knows that this is the most effective kind of mind hack to doing big things, is having the big, taking those big risks.
So I love that. And that ties right into this other kind of like habit or mindset piece that you talk about in your course, which I also loved, which is about like iteration. And before we talk about that for a second, just one thing I sort of want to draw a parallel here between this like timeline piece and what we're going to talk about, like iterating and the role of iteration, is that confidence plays a role in all of this. Like, and especially what you just said about Elon Musk, right? Is that sometimes things don't go our way, right? Like you could have set that deadline around six weeks, and something could have happened in the middle. And
I could have gotten COVID. Yeah. And 3 weeks would be gone.
Right. Like, and when I did it too, like I, did have some things happen. Right. And so my launch actually did get really crippled by it. And I think the key to this is that loop with confidence, and not just external confidence, like how you portray yourself, but also like having your own back.
It doesn't matter how many times we have to change something. What matters is, are we learning from our mistakes and from our successes? Are we taking the things that work and amplifying them? Are we taking the things that aren't working and discarding them, right? So it doesn't matter. Timeline also has to be held quite loosely. Like you should have, in product mindset, there's this concept of minimum viable product, MVP. So you want to basically get to your MVP as quickly as possible. Let's just get something out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just get this giving form online that's maybe has some innovative ideas and start testing, because that's where all the action starts to happen, is in the real life moments of testing this and then getting data from it. Is it working? How much of it is working? Where are people stopping or dropping off or whatever? And then you start iterating from there. So this idea of MVP, as opposed to a project mindset, which is the opposite. It's like, okay, we sit in a boardroom, isolated from the world. We make the entire plan from start to finish of what we're going to do. And then we start to implement it, and we cannot veer away from the plan. And it doesn't matter that maybe there's really compelling data coming in halfway through the project that like, this is not going to work. Nope, we have a plan. We're going to follow the plan. No, we're doing plan, right? That's not real world thinking. But I think that's what a lot of, I think that's the sort of secret behind the tech industry and the new world of online startups, is that they're constantly iterating, constantly changing, constantly shipping an MVP and seeing how it performs in the real world, to try and find that product market fit, that aha moment, that moment where something clicks and it starts to actually work. But the problem is, a lot of businesses are stuck in the past where they think or pretend or act like a lot of things in business and life are predictable, which they're not. So just because you have a plan, if you're not able to adjust that plan and take in real time information, that plan is worth nothing. And so with monthly giving, what that looks like is a lot of organizations I work with will do like the 10-step plan, and they'll put something out in the world. Here's our new monthly giving program. We followed, people say sometimes to me, like, I followed all the steps in your course, but it's just not working. I'm like, well, what have you done since the launch to try and test different things? Have you done an A/B test? If you ask nonprofits, how many of them have run an A/B test? I think something like 80% will say no. Right? Even just the basic, simple data gathering tools are not there. And so you throw your hands up and you say, well, I guess that's never going to work for us. But guess what? There's a million different factors different levers you can tweak and pull to optimize for it working. But if you have that very limiting mindset of like, we tried it, it didn't work, moving on, then of course it's never going to work.
Totally. And I think, like, even as you were talking, I'm just kind of thinking about this for the first time. I think there is like this scarcity mindset, like control piece here. Like, I was thinking about, okay, so why in the for-profit world do we find data and iterating so valuable versus the nonprofit sector? What might be like a mindset, like thing that's kind of intercepting that? And I think about how nonprofits really feel like they don't want to miss their chance, right? Like they're like, well, I only get one chance in front of this funder. Or I only get one chance with the person coming to that landing page, or I only get one chance at that email. So why would I send out two if one of them is going to be better? And then I'm going to learn that like the wrong email went to some of those people. Like, I think that's all baked in scarcity mindset. I was talking to my husband the other day about how in the for-profit sector, and like, especially in the small business sector, if you're selling online, you watch your conversion rate a lot. Like how many people did this behavior and then converted to buy your product, right? And conversion rates that people are proud of go from 2 to 20%. I watch people celebrating like my blah, blah, blah converted at 3%. And then I was saying to him, I was like, but if that was a nonprofit, what they would be talking about is that 97% didn't donate, because that is our framework, right? We are always thinking about what's not there instead of celebrating what is there. And I think that's why when we step out of the nonprofit sector, we can see things so differently, and we can see the value of data testing. I don't believe I A/B test constantly because I have no belief that that's my one shot, or that all the people on my list are all the people who will ever be a part of my work, or that there's even a fixed amount of people. Oh my gosh, there's only 500 people who might ever work with me. So I have to make sure everything I do with them, right? Like we don't operate that way, but I watch nonprofits do it every day.
Absolutely. And I remember hearing someone say the nonprofit, just the name like starting your name with something that is not is, I have to believe that names hold power. And so someone once said, the nonprofit industry should be called the for good industry instead, just to get rid of the non-word. But I believe that so I think it's so true what you're saying, is that there is a scarcity mindset that often nonprofit folks fear that, a lot of us fear that donor perception is going to drop if we do something risky or bold, or if we fail. And all donors really want is transparency. They want it to be inspired, and they want you to be transparent. Right. So donor, we all know of these terrible stories, right? Like the Mountains Beyond Mountains guy who was like, I don't know, I forget. He was in his basement, like buying a whole bunch of his own books, and a whole scandal about that. But so, these stories of huge epic nonprofit failures, I think still plague the industry, right? We're so preoccupied with our 5 stars on Charity Navigator. We're so scared and worried about how donors are going to perceive us that we truly cripple ourselves. I don't see the founders of Airbnb or Spotify caring so much about how the industry is going to perceive them. They care about where the rubber meets the road, how many people are using our product. And they're not afraid to alienate the people who are not for them. Like, hey, you're not feeling the vibe here. Cool. Go rent a hotel room from Hyatt. That means you're not an Airbnb-er. Like, you're not our people, right? And that's how I wish nonprofits thought more about their work. Hey, we are afraid to infuse our website with personality. So we're going to be the driest, most boring website you've ever seen because we want everybody to come here. Well, guess what that does? That means nobody wants to hang out with you, right? I remember Ryan Holiday said a long time ago that the biggest hurdle we face when starting out is not failure, it's ambiguity, it's obscurity. The biggest fear you should have is to be noticed by no one, right? Like that's the worst thing that can happen, is that nobody cares. And so, if you take that fear, if you say like, I don't really even want the people that don't care. I'm going to show up with my full personality, taking risks, being bold. And if that offends some people, or if it alienates some people, that's okay, because what that's going to do is it's going to attract the right people to you. And so, if you want to take a really crazy big risk and you're afraid that you're going to fail and some people will leave your organization, just be transparent with your donors. 100% believe most of them will be like, oh my gosh, thank God somebody finally took a risk at this organization and it failed. But you know what? They told us what happened and they were transparent. We've had some epic failures at Charity Water, like big ones. And every single time after the big epic failure, you know what happens? Outpouring of support from our donors. People write us the kindest, most amazing notes, letters, call us and say, you guys, we're so sorry that happened, but man, you had the balls to do that. And that's awesome. I respect and admire you so much more for it.
Confidence is contagious. I know you talk about this too, right? And like being bold is contagious and having vision is contagious. And so whatever, and like energy attracts like energy, right? It's all the same. And so if you are not getting the energy that you want to be getting, like I would take a deep look at how you're showing up. And I would just try for one day to show up really differently. One day, give yourself 24 hours, watch Vik's confidence lesson, give yourself 24 hours and just try to show up that way and just see what happens, right? Like you're not going to ruin the whole thing in 24 hours. Just like have that win. Because I know what it feels like to be the ED who wasn't confident, who was like all the things we're talking about. Like that was 100% me. And I just wish I had been listening to conversations like this then to even know that there could be another way.
Yeah. So on that note, this is so funny. And I think about this now a lot. Scott has this Fitbit bracelet that tracks his calories, and he's had it for probably 2 or 3 years. And as COVID has, happened and et cetera, he's been on Zooms every single day, 10, 12, 14 meetings a day. And lately, like his thing says, it's called a Whoop. His Whoop says he burned like 5,000 calories almost every day, 4,000 to 5,000 calories daily. And at first we're like, what is happening? Are you okay? Like, are you sick? Like, what's going on? And we just figured out lately, like probably a month ago, we're like, he's like, I am trying so hard to transfer energy across the screen. He's like, veins are popping. He's trying so hard to transfer energy to every meeting he's having, right? Because he knows it's contagious. And that's what people are moved by, is not somebody who's shy and quiet and subdued and is putting you to sleep. It's by the big energy you bring. Yeah. So it's like a workout every day. So you get double the benefits. You probably lose some weight and you'll be a heck of a lot more motivated.
Okay, you're gonna have to tell him I'm not wearing it right now, but every time I do a webinar or have a conversation like this, the exact same thing happens. I will go off the webinar and it's like I get the ping from Fitbit that's like, "Are you done with your workout?" And I'm like, so
that's how everybody should show up. If your Fitbit doesn't say you've just worked out after a Zoom call, you're doing it wrong.
I love that. I mean, it's so true, right? And like, yeah, gosh, we could talk about all of this forever. I think, one of the things I just kind of want to like highlight and sum up for people where they're like, what do I take away from all of this? I mean, one is like this confidence and vision piece as like your North Star, your big, hairy, scary goals. Go watch that lesson, like start there. And then recognizing that from here to there are going to be a number of habits that you're going to have to build and implement along the way to get you there, right? So you're going to have to break things down by timelines, give yourself that timeline, force yourself into Parkinson's law. You're going to need to practice iteration. And I just want to say, like, you also really need to bring a lot of awareness to what's happening in your mind and your body throughout this whole process. Because if you are sitting there being like, wow, this conversation that they're having feels so far away from my reality, then the first thing I would actually do is like sit down, write down everything that you're feeling. Like, what's the story that does feel true to you right now? How do you feel trapped? What are those limiting beliefs? Get them all out, put them all on paper. And then on another sheet of paper right next to it, I want you to just write the exact opposite story, just the exact opposite story. And then just sit with that for a second. Like, what would it feel like to pick that piece of paper, to have that story? And then what's one thing you could do today or tomorrow, depending on what time you're listening to this, to get you one step closer to that page? That's your homework.
Yes, I love that. And I will just wrap up by saying that it's so rewarding and gratifying when you get better as a person, right? Like that. And I think a lot of us come from this old world way of thinking that your personal development and how you show up at work are totally disconnected. It doesn't matter. But the reality is, if you have, unaddressed trauma, or if you have these limiting beliefs from your childhood that you learned from your parents, because that's where we all learn our limiting beliefs, you're bringing that to work every day as a leader, as a fundraiser, as an employee. And the result you're getting is a product of that work that's kind of been undone or has not been addressed. And like we're all doing that work all the time on ourselves. Like I remember literally doing this, your list. When I first started, it was so weird and hard for me to show up as a face, a teacher, like on Instagram, on my website, all day long, there was this constant voice. Who are you to know anything and try and tell other people what you know? Like you're a nobody. Like you don't have anything important to say to add to this conversation, right? And I literally would do this. I would write the opposite of everything that this little voice was trying to tell me. I would write my, people call it a vision board. There's all these names for it. But yes, I would write like, I am a confident communicator. I am a concise communicator. I bring energy into my communication. I say things that are light bulb moments for other people. Like I remember writing all these things, and sometimes days would be like, I'd look at them and be like, no, you're not that. You suck. But I just tried to live. I know, but I think we all have those moments.
Yeah,
but
totally.
You live like, that's where the phrase fake it till you make it comes from, but I don't like that phrase. But that's the idea, is like you kind of find that intrinsic worth. Like for me, it's my faith. When I remind myself, like God put me here, He has a plan for me. There is no extra people in this world, as Marie Forleo likes to say. Like God didn't make any extra people. Like, you're not just here like to do nothing. He put you here for a specific plan to carry out your destiny. And so you can take up the space, and you have all these things. You just haven't like accessed them yet. So that really helps. That helped me a lot is I looked at that list and I would say, you know what, Vik, those things are in you. They're still in you. You just haven't really like perfected the skill yet. And the only way to perfect a skill is to keep doing it. That's the only way. It's the only way. Keep doing it.
I want to highlight a few things that you just said, because I just think like they are a masterclass in themselves, which is just like, I really believe that like leadership, and one is that you and I are both examples of like, this is not our natural state. Like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, neither of us probably would have been able to have the conversation that we're having right now, like both from an energetic perspective and, and we've both done so much personal work to get us here. I talk a lot about how I hired a visibility coach before launching my business because I was so uncomfortable being visible, being in front of a camera, having the spotlight on me. And, people feel like it's hard to relate to that now because I'm doing it all the time, but I did the work to get there. And so I think one, like we share
the only way wasn't like a light switch. The only way you got there was by continuing to just do it. Yeah. And at first probably do it badly, but then do it a little bit better with each time.
Yeah. And had a coach who helped hold me accountable and worked with me on some of the bigger beliefs that were coming up for me, learning some of those skills. Like I would write things like mantras like that on my mirror in the bathroom. So I'd like see them every morning. And I still have those thoughts too, of course, like, why can't you figure this out? Everyone else seems to be able to figure it out. Like we all have we all get triggered into those moments. But I think what you and I really focus on is like, okay, like that's life, that happens. Sometimes our brain is mean to us, but we don't make decisions from that place. We know how to get ourselves out of that place. And then we use these habits and these skills that we're learning from the world around us, not just our nonprofit silos, to continually grow our own craft and in all of our like mission and driven work with that North Star around the impact that we want to leave as a part of our legacy on this earth.